500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
G'day everyone, you're listening to Expand the Phantom Podcasts. We're the team from Chronicle Chamber. You can see us at our website, chroniclechamber.com, and also you found this podcast. If you're keen by the, I'd say just about 10 to 15 minutes in, you should subscribe via YouTube or via your favourite podcast apps. And while you're there, don't forget to give us a rating on your podcast app. But most importantly, tell a mate about us, because it's the word of mouth and the jungle drums beating that we really value our listeners coming from. This is podcast number 246, marching towards 250. We would raise the bat, but we'll see what that looks like. It's our March 2023 Comics and News podcast, and I'm joined tonight by our regulars, Jermayn Parker and Stephen East. How are you, Jermayn?
Good, mate. Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting tonight. I've enjoyed the Frew comics, and there's some interesting news to kind of go through. We haven't waited 2 months as well, so this podcast shouldn't be as long as our last one, which was like a bumper 3.5 hours long, which we had to split into 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
So,
Touchwood, don't speak too soon. Because there are some cracking Frew stories in particular, and keen to chat about them. Steve, you must be. How's your March been? And you're keen to get into some comics?
I'm keen to get into some comics. March has been absolutely full on, and it's always nice to take a breather and just escape into the pages of a Frew every week or two. It's been good.
So Steve, you do your podcast in the car. Do you read your Frew comics in the car as well?
I read 2 of the comics actually on the train this past month. But
so you in transport, eh? So
had a couple of trips down to Melbourne, and I thought, oh, what could I do? Just listen to something or read a comic? Yeah, I read a couple of comics.
Well, very good. So it will be good to get into the Frew comics. Of course, we've got reviews from comics from Scandinavia as well and around the world. And then in the news, as you said, Jermayn, there has been a lot going on. Probably not any massive news, but quite a bit going on. So it'll be good to run through all of the happenings in the fandom world from March after we've gone through the comics. So without any further ado. So let's rip into the Frews first, as we love to do. Frew 1939. Here it is. It's the two stories in the comic. The cover by Jeremy McPherson, of course, and Germ's now sharing the screen, which means I can no longer see my run sheet. So it's 2 stories, as I said. The Lord of the Dragon is the first one, and that is it's a Sparta story from 1969. Senio Pratesi is credited there. And then, of course, we've got part 2 of The Strange Day of the Witchman, which is the Shane Foley story.
Now, I enjoyed this story. I really enjoyed this story a lot. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see the pages of it as we stroll through, as we talk about it. For me, one of the things I enjoyed the most about the story, apart from the art, which I love some of the artwork that came out from Sparta back in the day, was I liked the portrayal of the Jungle Patrol. Like, for me, the one key element that made me like this story was that the Jungle Patrol was actually a Jungle Patrol. I think too often the Jungle Patrol are portrayed as overgrown Boy Scouts, but in this story, they're detectives. They are almost as effective as the Phantom, if not as effective. They, they keep the peace. They investigate, and to be honest, they almost didn't really need the Phantom to solve the problem. And for me, that is a good thing. Like, you've got here, the Jungle Patrol thinking quick. He's like, realizing that, the uncle's a little bit shady and stuff like that. But for me, the best thing about this story was the portrayal of the Jungle Patrol. What do you guys think?
What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'm on the same vein there as Jim. Like the story as a whole reminds me of a James Bond movie, like Doctor No. Mainly because of the dragon, or the motorized dragon that comes out to try and scare people away.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And also the car chase as well also made me
Yeah.
think of James Bond movies. And the way that, I can't remember the patrolman's name, but the way he's able to he keeps an eye out, and he notices these little
Is it
things.
Wells? Yeah, Lieutenant Wells.
Lieutenant Wells, he notices these little details, and it saves his life, and he's able to capture the bad guys and that sort of thing. And yeah, I have to agree with Jim. It's great to have the Jungle Patrol portrayed as the top law enforcement agency that they're supposed to be. I could have done without Colonel Weeks's inferiority complex, though. That got a bit old. It didn't need to happen. But I did like the parallel stories between the Jungle Patrol and the Phantom, and how they're able to meet up at the end. Much to the surprise of the Phantom, like he thought, oh yeah, I'll call Colonel Weeks and the Jungle Patrol will be here pretty soon. Next thing you know, he looks up and here they are already. And I thought you mentioned the art. I thought the art was very good. And when you were saying in a little group chat that you thought this was a great Sparta story, well, my first reaction was, well, Sparta kind of have a pretty low bar, but I really enjoyed this story. It really was good. Like, it's from the 60s, isn't it?
Yes.
67, yeah.
67, and you can see the James. Well, for me anyway, I saw the James Bond influences from that decade.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have both said. It is good to see the Jungle Patrol. As Jerm said, that integral part of the story. And you mentioned, Steve, the hoverboat or whatever it is that's designed to look like a fire-breathing dragon, and is reported to the Phantom as such. That was probably, I enjoyed that too, and we've seen that in Phantom comics before, where bad guys have set up near tribes or created some sort of fire-breathing or god or whatever it is. So probably the only thing I didn't really, the thing that jumped out at me as a negative for the comic was the story was that they've got this fire-breathing dragon which has been scaring everyone away. And the first time the Phantom goes out, it zooms right up to him and it has a megaphone saying, "Stand where you are, you're captured." So he didn't even try and scare him away and give him the chance to see through it.
Yeah, it was almost underutilized.
It really was. It wasn't almost. It was underutilized, I thought.
Yeah, it was just it was an instant boom over. So, but that said, for the reason of even trying to bring it in, I agree. It is one of the better Sparta stories. I haven't gone back and ranked all of them that I've been able to read through Frew's reprinting of them. But it's fantastic that they are. And what you said about the art, Steve, I really like. I agree with what you said about the Colonel Weeks having an inferiority complex, but I do really like the drawings of him, the depiction of him. He does look like the Colonel Weeks that I, sort of know from the Cy Barry's, and it's obviously influenced by Cy Barry's art.
Yeah, that's probably why I like the art. It was very much of its time.
But I think it still holds up. Like, I think the whole story holds up.
Yeah, agreed.
Because like we're talking about, you said it 67, so that's 55 years ago, or maybe 56. I'm not quite sure where my maths is, but for something that's 50 odd years old, I thought it's quite good. I thought sometimes a lot of the time with comics portrayed back then, some of their stereotypes of the way they draw the Africans, the way they draw the Asians and all that could be a little bit distasteful, but I didn't find it too distasteful in this story as well. I thought they were depicted, reasonably well. So I thought that was good. But yeah, so like overall, I applaud Dudley to have the courage to print this story, because I think it would have been quite easy not to print the story because of some of the inferior stories that we've seen in in Phantom's World previously.
Yeah. It doesn't. I've got to be honest. It doesn't feel like a courageous decision to me. Sorry, Dudley, if that relates what the term just said. But it's a good story. It's well worth publishing. And if this comes across your desk as an editor, you're like, excellent, good. That's a solid regular issue. Pump that out. let's move on and plan the next thing.
All right, well, I guess
it's not setting the world on fire, but it was a good, fun little romp.
yeah. So
And the backup story, the Shane Foley part 2. Now, we know this, listeners don't. We're actually going to have a chat with Shane as part of our next podcast, which episode 247 when it comes out. So we'll have a chat with Shane, and we will talk a bit more about this story with him. But now that he's not in the conversation, guys, he may be listening. But what do you really think?
what do we really think? For me, the things I love geeking out as a Fork fan, but as a Phantom fan over this story. You've got the whole veiled lady, which for those who have come in late, Lee Falk introduced the veiled lady, and it had these gigantic creatures in it. So in this story, it's like, is the Phantom hallucinating, or is he actually being attacked by a giant creature? What do you guys think? Do you think he's being attacked by a giant creature, or do you think he's hallucinating?
I think Shane's done it well enough that you can interpret it as either, particularly because, those who know the Veiled Lady story will absolutely have that in their minds. Those who don't will see it as hallucination. So I think it works really well for either way.
Well, when I went back to read the original Veiled Lady story, I was actually checking out the background to see if I could find like a rib cage of the serpent just in the background. So that's what Shane may have picked up on, just to see, was it real or was it a
because there obviously wasn't a huge snake in the Veiled Lady story, but there was certainly lots
of like little
creatures a huge snake would like to eat. So
yeah, so it's plausible that there could have been one.
Yeah,
and then of course, if you're looking on your screen now, you would see a blurry shadow with what looks like to be someone on it firing an arrow. I loved, what I loved about it was because at this stage, the Phantom's forgotten about, or this Phantom, the Night Phantom, has forgotten about what the LP stands for. But obviously, the little people haven't. They're still looking out for the Phantom and all that. And I got to say, this is probably, dare I say it, and I might upset some, some Forkers, but I reckon this might be the best usage of the little people I have seen in this story out of all of Lee Falk's past stories.
Because they only appear in 2 panels, there's not much of them. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's the other one as well. But and
on the very back page,
I just think that it was well done, and I'm not a huge fan of the little people, but I like the way that Shane used them in this story, where they're just that little mysterious element, little side piece, and I'm quite happy with it.
Do we discuss the non-resolution, if you like, of the 9th Phantom and his 2 wives, and the runt versus because we did think at the end of part 1 that yes, Shane had something up his sleeve. No, was it in part 1 where was the caption saying, "Oh, we'll work it out later"?
Yes, that was in part 1. So we assumed that he was going to explore that. Without giving too much of our next podcast away, he does talk about some elements and stuff. So look, if you wanted Shane to explore that, make sure you listen to this podcast, next podcast, because he does go into a little bit of that. But I like how he's kind of teased it, but he hasn't committed to it yet. And I would like to see it done, but it kind of leaves room where, well, we might do it, we may not. Let's kind of see what happens. So
there's nothing to clarify. the ninth Phantom was short, and he was married to what was her name?
Mongolian
The
princess.
Mongolian princess, and one of his brothers, I think, married Flame, and had to step in
So
for
one of the other fans, so one of the brothers became the Phantom.
Yeah, he had, he kind of like had to, like Julie had to, just had to step in there at one stage while, Kit 4 was down. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was Kit 1. Maybe it was 2 or 3.
Oh, I think
Well,
that's
it's not
a really
Kit
good
1.
idea, Steve.
What's that,
I
mate?
think, I think that's a really good idea, Steve, because what better way to be, Phantom his many men than to have 4 brothers, 3 of them being identical triplets. If you only had to be the Phantom for 3 months a year, that would give you time to go and be a teacher or a priest or a sailor or whatever the other 3 were.
It would also allow the one Phantom to travel Europe full time, and the other one to keep the jungle piece.
Absolutely, and the third one going over to the Caribbean, and meeting a wife over there. So yeah, maybe triplets, identical triplets as Phantoms. That should be more multiple births. I say it's working for Kit and Heloise, and I think that's the solution to your 9th Phantom dilemma.
Yeah, it could work because the Runt, we never see him have children in any story so far, but in the Phantom that married Flame, we do see him having children who became the Phantom.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe something happened
maybe the
to...
Runt does get killed off.
Yeah.
His brothers go take it on.
Yeah.
There we
So
go.
maybe.
And this absolutely is probably a question for another podcast. But it does, and the other, spoilers, the other guest on episode 7 will be with Shane will be Matt Kime. Right at the very beginning of when I got to know Matt Kime, he was sort of speculating on a story where the family, it wasn't necessarily just the oldest son of the father who became the Phantom, but the family members could. And I think that still fits within the oath, and that would certainly fit with what we're talking about here with the 9th Phantom.
Yeah, now it's fair to say that you haven't talked to Shane about a potential solution, have you?
No.
Yeah. I just wanted that to be quickly raised.
Just in case you're listening, I shook my head, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't think we didn't speak. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
we haven't.
no, that was just speculating
on
like Steve's idea.
Yeah. I say that, look, I think we'll leave that there. People will, hopefully that will whet people's appetites for 247, and we'll move on to Frew 1947.
Just before we do, we do have to give Jeremy McPherson a shout out for the cover. We sort of glossed over it,
yes.
But he's done a typical Jeremy McPherson, really good. He reminds me so much. He's the modern Antonio Lemos, if I can say that, in terms of the style of his composition and the way that he draws his Phantoms. I really like what he does. So,
all right.
I was actually thinking,
front cover or back cover do you like best? I think I like the back cover better.
Yeah, but the front, it's a better back cover image. You wouldn't use that as a front cover image, I don't think. Oh, you probably could.
Steve, which one do you like better?
The front. But I do, I think the back cover works as a back cover.
And
but I was also thinking when I was collecting the comics up for the podcast that I thought this one, the Jeremy's, was the pick of the 3.
Of the covers?
The 3 covers. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the second cover then. And that's Lauren Marshall, a Lauren Marshall cover for issue 1940. Issue 1940 is, again, another two-part story, which I guess the first one is an issue or a story that I know you in particular, Jen, were very excited to see. It's the next installment of the 22nd Phantom storyline or story arc, if you like, that Claes Reimerthi started a few years before he passed not long ago. This one's called Attack on the Jungle Hospital. It is by Claes Reimerthi and with the artwork from Janusz Ordon. Now, you'll know exactly, Jerm, this is how many more Claes Reimerthi stories there are left in this series?
So there's another 3, which I'm assuming we will see probably another 1, and then we'll probably see another collector's replica, and then another 2 from Frew. So we should see them by Frew this year. They were originally published in Phantom Men 2021, so they're a couple of years old. At this stage, which if you listen to one of our past podcasts where we talked to Andreas and Jacob, they said they haven't created the next parts yet. So hopefully they do that. Hopefully they find a creator who can take on the storytelling of that.
And this all 4 parts are by Claes.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. All right.
It's probably also worth making mention if most people probably enjoyed the story originally but have forgotten what happened. We've got for those who came in late, a video up on our website and YouTube. So it's worth, I think it goes for about 6 minutes. So hopefully that will fill in some gaps. And then if you watch that, then read this, and then you'll probably have a few, yes, I remember that now moments when you give it a read.
I actually did it the other way around because, it's been a long time between
drinks,
between drinks for the 22nd Phantom stories, and I honestly struggled to remember what was going on. So I'd read it, and then I'd seen the video had popped up on my YouTube feed, and I thought, I better go watch that, and so I did watch the For Those Who Came In Late video. That really did help to fill in the blanks. I really should have watched that before I read the story, because I'd totally forgotten that Babu was the president and that the vultures were involved. Now, just on that, I reckon that the vulture might be Diana in disguise. I mean, a vulture to be Diana.
Yes, which is we were talking about. Yeah. Oh well, you're listening to this if you're read it. If you're listening to this and you haven't read it, you're expecting
few things. Well, I'm not telling you what the vulture or / Diana is doing. I'm just saying that they're in the last scene. I think it's.
You have your suspicions.
Yeah, I have my suspicions.
Well, especially because she's still in Africa.
Yeah. But over the holidays, I'll go back and reread the saga, as I think I'll appreciate it more. I think I'm going to butcher his name. Was it Janusz?
That's what I've gone with.
Yep. I thought his art was really, really good.
Oh yeah. Agree.
But the story has suffered due to the period of time that's passed since the last episode. Hopefully, the next parts, like you said, Jem, will come in quick succession, because it did. I was a little bit lost.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if people are listening to this and you're still lost, go watch the video. We'll have a link to it in the show notes. Or if you haven't read it yet, watch the video, because it's only 6 minutes. Myself and Mikkel try and be as quick and concise as possible. I think we initially had twice as much, and we spent we ran off a script, and we're like, no, get rid of this, get rid of that, try and condense it and make it as quick as possible. So hopefully that will help fans. You're right about the art. We talked about this with Andreas and Jacob in the Phantom Men podcast, but Janusz is probably the one artist whose art looks as good in black and white as it does in colour.
I thought it looked great in black and white. Did he do the original, the first part, the first 3?
The first 3 was done by Paul Ryan, Alex Suviak, and Raphael Rius. The second section of the story, so the next 4 stories, were done by Janusz, and then these 4 are done by him as well.
Cool.
So he's definitely made it his own. I guess this was interesting. This page here, page 8, where they're kind of like saying, we don't, our strength is our invisibility. Why are we doing this? And I thought that was a very good page, because it's right. And it kind of explains why the vultures are potentially becoming, a little bit more visible.
Exposed.
Yeah, a bit more exposed. So I like that as well. The thing probably my only concern about this story is that the language is not M or R. It might be a bit PG, and I'm, just wary of, like we've talked about it in the past about, if your son or your daughter reads it, some of the language may be a little bit too strong for them. But I think that's probably my only minor little quibble.
Can I ask exactly what, Germ? Because I did not.
There was a.
I don't remember that
There
myself.
was a SOB mentioned in there, and there was a couple of others which I can't remember. Probably should have actually made notes of them, but it was just a little bit of PG language. No F or S words.
Did not notice a thing. Maybe that's because I work in schools and that's the least.
Yeah,
that was the cursing that was getting around. That would be fine.
it's just more that like I guess one of the things about the Phantom that I've always enjoyed is that an 8-year-old can read it, and I'm just just wary. Would this be a little bit too adult? A little bit too mature for an 8-year-old, but I guess even I don't know, but that's
for an 8-year-old probably. But I've got a 14-year-old who has a subscription, and I didn't blink about him reading this, and he said that he's enjoyed it. Maybe I should be spending 5 minutes with him before. I've said that so many times, and I never do it. Look, I actually, I really enjoyed the story. This is the first story of the 22nd Phantom, I guess, storyline that I've genuinely enjoyed. And I didn't go back and read the other ones before I picked this one up, and I'm actually glad I didn't, because my recollection, my recollection of those is not enjoying them far more than it is what the plot circumstances were. And the first 2 or 3 pages of this story, I thought, give a really good overview of where the storyline is. And what's going on with the 22nd Phantom. And again, the way that it's been explained here, they made it necessarily, I suppose, with the first installment, it spent so long explaining that the Phantom was missing and all that sort of stuff that made it seem like it was a really big deal. Well, it is obviously a really big deal, but it made it look like he's dying or dead or whatever. Here, it's just he's not here, and these kids have stepped in. And I guess it's similar to what I was just saying before about kit 1 and 2, 3, and 4. The family members just step in when the Phantom's away. So, and as a result, and also because Claes, I think, is doing, has done in this a really good job of tying in as much of the Phantom universe as he can. And I think by having all of the characters like that have returned for this, and the way that he's used them and explaining them, he's making this palatable, I think, for who are long-term Fork fans, because there's lots of long-term Fork characters in here behaving the way that Fork would have had them do, but also evolving in a really natural way. The Vultures, as you said, coming out of the shadows and starting to be a bit more prominent. That's probably what a criminal organisation would want to do ultimately, if they're powerful enough. And also General Bababu becoming less powerful. That is absolutely true to his character, and everything that happens to him is like, that's what I would have expected from the General.
And then you've got elements like the Jungle Patrol being attacked, and things like that. You've got Old Man Moz. You've got Caleb Otago, though he's not a Lee Falk creator. He's been in Phantom End stories for the last, probably 30, 40 years.
It did strike me that Moz is a seer here. He's and I think that's just where the character is now, because it's being done in the Phantom stories, and it's being done by Tony DePaul. That's been the case for probably 20 years now. People are hanging on to him not being a seer.
I'd say probably 30, close to 30 years now.
There you go.
Probably the mid to late 90s. That just makes me feel old when I say 30 years, as in the 90s. So I guess, what do we think about Dr. Axel dying?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
This isn't a real storyline anyway. It's in a future that probably won't happen.
It's
That
not
was-
So I think this is a bit of a misnomer that a lot of people are holding their hat on. It's not this may happen in the future. It's actually like if you actually read the stories, it is, in the near future. So it's not a what if.
No. It's still Egmont though. It's not the newspaper.
But
anyway, Dr. Axel's getting old anyway.
Yeah, well, so
it's probably a decent death defending his hospital.
Yeah, I actually I don't mind it. And as much as, we're seeing the death of a beloved character who has seen life come into 2 generations of Phantoms and probably is one of the first people to actually do that in the history of the Phantom. I think I like, it's not that I like the death, but I think the death is
a good death.
Yeah. As much as you can say a death is a good death.
No, you absolutely can, particularly, not if you're talking about anything that's happening in the real world. But talking about comics and any narrative or stories, I said that I didn't like the death of Dr. Axel, and I don't. It's sad, but it's not in a way that made me go, "Oh, this story's no good."
It was respectful.
It made sense, and it fit with. And it's disappointing and it's sad because it is sad when you lose characters that, it happens all the time in movies and books, and it's not just the Phantom.
I think it also, I think I liked how they show respect by not showing him dead, like they cover it by the desk. Like you never actually see Dr. Axel being dead, if that kind of makes sense. So it's respectful. I think they handled it well.
Speaking of portrayals, what did you make of the way that certainly the artwork, hard to know what the direction given was, but the portrayals of the 2 Phantoms fighting together and operating together? What did you make of that?
I like it. Like the first, I'm not sure if you remembered again, the first story or 2, they're spoilt brats, but they've really come a long way. They're fighting together. They're what I expect Kit and Heloise to be like. Like if you'd only ever read the first story and never read any of the other stories, you would go, "This is utter crap." But if you read all the stories and if you're invested in it, you will see the progression and the maturity and the ability for them to be able to fight together as twins, and they have a good symmetry.
So they should. They've had the same coach.
Exactly. And that was my point, is that, they shouldn't. I understand why Claes portrayed them as, a bit of rivalry, bit of rivals and stuff like that at the start, but I didn't like that. But I like the way they're portrayed here. And they're still their individual person. Like you see them have different strengths and different ways of fighting and stuff like that. But they're, so they're not a wooden character in the sense of, they lose all their personality because they put the mask on. But, so they've still got their personality of Kit and Heloise. But, so I'm liking it.
No, I agree with all of that. And probably what I was alluding to as much as anything was I think that's been complemented by the artwork. It's not just the writing. If you look at page 22, which is the fight. Yeah, you're on it. Actually, there you go. Which is the fight scene between the 2 of them. I thought it was well done by Janusz that Kit leads the charge in. I mean, Heloise is right on his shoulder, of course, but it just sort of will help speak to the Phantom's not a woman. No one's going to make that connection because they're also petrified by Kit charging in. And then even the fight scene, she seems to be coming. Oh, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but she seems to be coming out of the shadows in that panel 22. And again, so not letting on that there's 2 Phantoms or that one of them's a female, because by the time they realise that, they're all unconscious on the floor.
Yeah, what? Someone on this podcast not reading something more into a comic than probably intended? Never. But look, you could be
And Steve,
right.
your theory about that hadn't even occurred to me, to be honest, when for your theory behind what's going on page 26. But now that you've said it, I'm really again, I'm enjoying your plot twists, Steve. I think that's a really great way to go.
Just part of the service I provide.
Yeah, for me, I picked up on it. Well, first of all, it was like, it can't be Diana because she was in Africa, and then this is, so for me,
It doesn't say anything about what day it was. It just
No, I didn't.
yeah, but
It depends
generally, if it is like a couple of weeks later or something, it will say in the top corner, like, at Kurt Fleming's residence 2 weeks later, or 2 days later, or something
you're
like
right.
that.
But also, whenever they're traveling between United States and Africa, it only takes a couple of hours.
Not a couple of hours. It's not
In
a
the
hop,
comics,
skip,
it does.
it's not a hop, skip, and jump.
But
But
one moment they're in Bangor, next moment they're at the UN. It happens pretty
yeah.
quick.
Well, maybe it might be a panel or two, but
Anyway.
Africa to America still, what that would be, I don't know, a 10, 14-hour flight, I'm
Everyone
assuming.
knows that time is different in the comics.
Yeah, that's true. All right, should we move on?
Yes.
you know what? I thought Diana was. Oh no, it's page 11 is the last time we see Diana in Africa. She's got plenty of time to get over there. Anyway, the second story, of course.
Actually, I was thinking the same thing too.
No?
I remembered thinking that too, that she hadn't appeared for a while and then appears there at the end.
Yeah. Anyway, who knows? We'll wait and see. Part 2 hopefully is in shortly or straight after the collector's edition. All right, the second story, and Jem's got it on the YouTube page. There is the next installment of Phantom in Vietnam, Said the Joker to the Thief, and I am enjoying Paul Mason naming all of his stories after songs of a certain style, enjoying that. And starts as we've come to expect, I guess, from these Phantom in Vietnams, with a page of an agent or a CIA report about a incident engaging with the Phantom. I continue to love the tip of the hat with Agent Leon Harrison Gross being the special agent in charge of this investigation. And that, of course, is Lee Falk's real name, Lee Falk being his pen name. So then we've got the Vietnam story. What did you think of this one, guys? Said the Joker to the Thief. Steve, we might start with you this time.
I think it suffers from the same fate, for lack of a better word, as the 22nd Phantom Saga does, because it's been a while since we've had a Vietnam story. And I forget stuff. It just happens. For the most part, the Phantom interacts with a character, and it's implied that they've met before, but I could not remember it, without having to go back.
Did you read this page here?
Which one?
This the note.
Was there a detail there that I must have gleaned over and not actually read?
Yeah, so there is.
I should go back and reread it.
So it's actually an old Lee Falk story called The Crime School.
Oh, right. So it's actually not from Paul Mason. It's not from a Paul Mason thing. It's actually from a Lee Falk story.
So it's a Lee Falk story called The Crime School, where basically a group of people, including Speedy, TNT, Itchy, and Spike are the others. Basically, they get a whole bunch of youth and take them to school to be crime gangs, and then to be gangs, and teach them how to blow up stuff. What do you call it? Do bank robberies and safe cracking and stuff like that. And then the Phantom rescues them. And then if you read this, it talks about how Speedy went to Vietnam to basically escape whatever his what do you call it? His to escape jail. So he served to escape that, and then that's why, as you read it, especially on this page here, he goes, who are you? Are you my conscience? Because he recognizes and he knows who he is.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting at, about imply that they've met before. And for a hardcore focus like yourself there, Jim, who has an encyclopedia or photographic memory of all these stories, excellent, fantastic little Easter egg, but it went over my head.
Yeah, interesting.
I really liked, and it was back on that page 27, Jim, the report. We zoomed right in on it at one point there, where just above that's fine. Lower, just above the dialogue. Yep. When he introduces Speedy, it's from the domestic incident report, Falk Barry 97/03/20 1967. The 97, it's the 97th daily story, which started on the 20th of March 1967. And then for those who can't work that out, it's in brackets through 1529, which is the last time it was published. But I thought that was a really cool little tip of the hat. And just, I haven't read Speed the Crime School anytime recently, and I haven't gone back to it. But it's a pretty obscure, random sort of a story to harken back to. I really liked the reference and the use of bringing that character in, so that it could extend on that.
I'm going to go back and read that Frew issue now. It makes it a bit easier than going back through the Vietnam stories and trying to find where the heck is this Speedy.
No, you won't.
I would have gone nuts trying to figure that out.
So
that just, this testament.
Yeah. So maybe
the week or two I've had I just did not pick up on that at all.
So maybe
see, I spent half of my time reading this story on the first page, to be honest. Going through all of the detail there.
Yeah.
Who are the vultures? I love it.
Maybe, yeah, who are the vultures? There's a lot of little things in there, because you've also got the TNT, Itchy and Spike, who are from the crime school as well. So so for me, I read that. I picked up Speedy. Where do I know that name from? And then I see the reference. And then I see the newspaper, and I'm smiling. And then I'm reading this story, and then I'm like, you've got this, I'll use the word, conflicted guy who has already been given one chance, and now he's been given two chances from the Phantom. And I think I like that aspect about the Phantom, is that, the Phantom's obviously conflicted himself being in this situation, in this war, but his humanity and his ability to be able to give second chances, first chances, and third chances to characters, and to save people from fates and save them from themselves and all that. I like that human element coming out on the Phantom in a horrible war like this was.
Yep. No, 100%. It's a really difficult fine line to walk, to have a character like the Phantom embedded now in the Vietnam War. Paul does it really, really well. I think he's got an absolute. We've talked about this before when we've mentioned these stories. The way he balances the Phantom being an independent citizen who's just looking for another person in a terrible situation, and we're 5 episodes in, he still hasn't taken sides at any given time. He's been against people who have been acting poorly, and supporting the people who are suffering the whole way through, and that has been one side or the other at various times, but in each instance he's done what we would hope our favorite hero would do when faced with that situation.
If I was to be negative, I would maybe like to see a brief mention in every story about the missing Wambezi prince. And I know this one is hard because because that's the reason why he's in Vietnam, is to try and find this Wambezi prince. Now, I know it's hard in this story because we're actually from not the Phantom's perspective, but we're actually from Speedy, and also from Leon Gross's perspective. But it would be, it's just that minor thing, because just to kind of remind people, oh yeah, that's right, that's the reason why he's in Vietnam. He's there to try and find this, and
maybe it might be something as simple as an extra scrap of paper on the front page that they may have picked up with a And
like
this
a
is me.
clue or
Has anyone seen the Wambezi Prince with the skull mark at the bottom of it and then a big question mark written over the top? That's the most basic and simple way you could.
Or, you know, like for instance, he asks him and he says, you know, have you seen this guy? And then it could just be, no, I haven't seen him. And it's just, you know, that little minor little thing like, oh yeah, that's right. But in saying that, you know, look, that's a very minor thing to pick on this story.
It is a minor thing, but if this is the first one you picked up and you see that the found's in Vietnam, you don't know. And I think that's my biggest issue with this. As a standalone issue, to me, it feels like an Act 2 breather that you might have in a movie. There's a break from all the action. You know, it's more of a drama thing rather than, like, there is a little bit of action. Like you had that page where he's coming out of the bushes, and I reckon that's a phenomenal piece of art. That one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that one there where he's coming out of the thing. But you know, the story's not as jam packed as I remember the other episodes being.
I actually like it not being jam packed.
Yeah, like it's a breather. Like, and you do need to catch your breath. Like you need to catch your breath in a movie as well. But
maybe it works exactly like that when it's a big trade paperback of all the Phantom Vietnam stories, and you're getting to read them.
I think it'll work really well as you know, when they're all when.
Yeah.
Now we'll say when we'll be optimistic. When they're all collected, that'll work really well as a breather.
Now, we're talking about collected, and I'm wary of time because I know we want to move on. Could you? Obviously, you know, I know Vietnam's not popular, and I'm not a war expert or anything like that. But could you do this as like a collection or something with, you know, and tie it in somehow with, you know, some of these war charities or legacy, and, you know, could you do something like that to, I don't know, like, you know, like maybe Frew do a trade paperback and every, I don't know, 50 cents out of the dollar, or, you know, or whatever goes towards legacy, or, you know, have an introduction, or maybe have an interview. There was actually a commando group called the Phantoms. You know, you could do a you know, an article about them in there, and just you know, like make it a statement piece, and you also supporting legacy, supporting those who have fought for our country. I just think that it could, you know, and I'm not sure where it is with the sensitivity, or how sensitive it is, or whether you could do it or anything like that. That's decisions best made outside of my my expertise. But
look, I would love to see it collected as a trade paperback whenever the run finishes, and I don't think necessarily it has. You know, I'd love to see it as a 200-pager with, you know, 20 little Phantom in Vietnam snippets, and you'd probably have a 2 or 3 part 8-page thing to tie it all out and wrap it all up. And if you could tie that in with a way of supporting the Vietnam vets who are not getting any younger, you said before that 1967, you know, that's 60 odd years ago now. That was when Vietnam was around. So you all of those blokes are 70 plus years old, and to support the guys who came back from Vietnam and lived the horrible circumstances that we get to just read comic books about because of the sacrifices that people in the past have made. So it's a great idea, Germ. And if Frew have got the pockets to do that, then great. If they only do the way you said, but if they only put out a trade paperback, well, either way, I'll still buy it and read that quite happily.
Definitely.
Donate a copy to the local RSL or something.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Now, we can't walk away from that story without commentary on the Phantom trope, on the little Easter egg that we saw. We know that Paul loves doing this, and but this is one that I would never have guessed in a million years. We saw Steggy in a Shane Foley story recently. Did you ever think that in a Phantom story published by Frew, we would see a Phantom copter?
Not wearing my Defenders of the Earth T-shirt today.
Lee Falk had had it in one story. It only ever appeared in one story, the Phantom Copter.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. This one that Paul's drawn looks so much like the toy. I really love it.
I'm assuming what the back cover as well. Does that look like the Skull Throne to use?
No, absolutely. That's I think I saw somewhere. It might have been Paul might have said on Facebook or Instagram that it's a commission piece that he did.
Yes.
I can only imagine that someone's asked for a Phantom in Vietnam Skull Throne depiction.
Yes. So
another little Easter egg is one of the bad guys or one of the bad army fellas. Is he like one of the bad guys? You know the story of the bad guys with the striped hats that they have on.
Yeah, you got me looking.
Well, I can see him on page 28, and he's there again, hanging. I think he's one of the ones hanging off the chopper
in the background. Oh yeah, the chopper.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Give full credit for it. Look, we've mentioned the back cover, the front cover. We've glossed over that from Lauren Marshall. I waxed lyrical about the last one. Anyone want to talk about Lauren's cover there?
Her style's a little bit different, but I like her work. I would love to see her do, because I think her style appeals to a younger audience, and I would love to see her, because I've seen some of her other work that she's done. I would love to see some sequential art from her, like a couple of page stories or something using her art style. I think it could be quite appealing.
I'm assuming she's done other covers for Frew.
Yeah, she's did the Monkey Gate one. The balloon, was it the balloon to the moon where
the
rope coming out. Yeah,
I got you. I preferred that cover.
No, I quite like this one.
And she's done a Frew poster as well in last year's Folio series.
Oh right, okay. I still need to pick that up. I hope they've still got it. So one thing I was going to ask you guys about the package of two stories, and I know we want to move on to the giant size, but just a quick comment. It struck me as I read these that in all of the stories, particularly the issue 1940, Claes Reimerthi and Paul Mason, that there's a real effort to be tying in phantom tropes and phantom history, and it's something that authors seem to be really conscious of these days, far more so than I ever remember them being. What are your thoughts on something like that?
So what do you mean?
Just that with we talked about Claes Reimerthi bringing in all of these characters from previous Phantoms and using all the Phantom tropes, using all the Lee Falk created stuff. Paul Mason's done exactly the same thing. We see that again in the Shane Foley. He's, it's one of the things he does is goes back and uses all Falk stuff. And we talked about it. Just struck me with all of these stories coming together to read for this, during March. They did the more modern authors, the stories that are brand new that we haven't seen before, are all making far more of an effort to keep the Lee Falk elements and tie in to the Phantom universe than we've ever seen before.
I think that's a good point, Dan, and you're onto something there. I agree.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of it's got to do with the fact that the Aussie creators like Matt, Shane, Paul are actually Duncan, Andreas. They're actually fans who are creating stories. So they're not creators who have been hired to create a Phantom story. They're actually fans first. And so
they got that in-depth background knowledge before.
Yeah, and look, we talk about this a lot in our next podcast. We've made mention of that, given that a good old flog.
It's almost as if we've already recorded this.
Yeah, we have. But I think that's the reason why, is because they are fans first. And so, they've been reading Phantom comics for the last, 10, 20, 30 odd years for these guys. And they've for probably 20 of those years, they've been like, oh, if I ever create a Phantom story, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. Oh, I love this element. I have to bring that into it. And now they get to play in the sandbox, so to speak. Now they're doing it, and they're showing great respect to the Phantom. I think it's a little bit different with Claes Reimerthi, because I think, and this is just my personal opinion, is that seeing he's changing the world so much, he's making it palatable by referencing all of these loved elements and loved characters to make it a little bit more easygoing. Yeah, well, but like for instance, Claes Reimerthi is probably one. There's not many people that you would allow or give authority to be able to kill off a love character like Dr. Axel. Tony Paul's probably one. Claes Reimerthi is probably one of the others, and then there might be one or two others that would have enough guts to do it and be able to pull it off in a respectful manner. But yeah, that's, I don't know.
And like you said, it's about the authority to do it, I suppose. And those guys have been writing, Claes, R.I.P.
He was doing it longer than we were fans for.
Yeah, exactly right. So, they certainly have the authority to do it. If I wrote a Phantom story and killed off Dr. Axel and had that published, everyone would say, well, that's not a real Phantom story. Who's this young upstart? And who's this joke?
Did you enjoy calling yourself young there, Dan?
Well, compared to Claes Reimerthi and Tony DePaul, I'll stand by that. Probably not so much the other Phantom. Yeah, I'm around the mark. Anyway, the point being that, and I think you're exactly right. You're in terms of Claes with this storyline. And I think it's working. I think for me it's working, where he's establishing. I think it's, as I said when we read it, I think he spent too long trying to get it going, and it became muddy. But now that we're in that new part of the universe, using all of those characters makes it more palatable, makes it more acceptable, makes it, and I'll be more inclined to enjoy reading the next one, I think. So
this is the 8th story of the 22nd Phantom saga.
It took a long time for me to start liking them, but so far, I like number 8.
Yeah, well, hopefully you enjoy the next 3 stories. Yeah. Should we move on?
We shall move on. All right, giant size number 24 is the last Frew we want to talk about here. It's of course, well, not of course. In this instance, it's another Sunday story. We see Charlton's from time to time, and some of the other American comics and that sort of thing. But this is one of the Sundays. Little Girl by Lee Falk and Cy Barry. It was published originally in the papers in 1982, and most recently in Frew in 1995. So on all of those counts, I think it qualifies to be in a giant size. Steve, do you want to tell us a little bit about Little Girl? Did you enjoy dipping back into a bit of nostalgia here?
I did enjoy it, and this is the one I read on the train coming back from Melbourne. Now, the story of Little Girl, like, it's a familiar story of knocking off the heir so that the vizier can look after can take over after the ruler dies. We see that in movies and stories, and I'm sure in Phantom comics, a fair bit over the years. Bit of a run-of-the-mill story, but fun, and the Phantom's working in the shadows, knocking off the bad guys. He's the Phantom being the Phantom. He's on a ship, knocking off the pirates. Oh, they're not pirates, but bad guys. The story doesn't set the world on fire, but it was nice.
It's a fun story, and I think that's what the giant size is all about. We talk about the covers being fun. This is probably the least fun the guys are having on the front cover out of all previous 24. But even there, the Panthers cracking a smile like, oh, how good is this? So they're still having fun being locked up. But but look, it is fun. I would have loved to seen this story Little Girl printed in color. The last couple of stories with some of the Charlton stories and stuff have been printed in color. It just would have been nice, because I've seen this story, A Little Girl, and I like the story, Princess Bonnibel. I think everyone always. I think when this first came out, and then when Rex became a prince, everyone was thinking that Bonnibel was going to become,
Yeah, I thought that when I was reading it. I thought that's just going to be
yeah.
the way the path is going to go.
Lee Falk probably just forgot about Princess Bonnibel, poor princess.
I reckon. I reckon this is the sort of story that Lee Falk could write in his sleep, and probably sometimes did. And so he's followed a formula that's worked. Once every decade for the first 7 decades. He's gone back to the well. He's forgotten the details of when he wrote the story 10 years ago, or maybe that he'd even written the story 10 years ago. But yeah, it's a good solid formula for him. And if you're only worried about getting paid, so putting your daily stories in so that you can get paid and move on, then it's going to work for you there. So if you start thinking about what's it going to look when it's collected in a comic book, 40 years from now, well, you might think about it differently.
But I think like we're talking about fun and all that, and that's what these giant size are. Is they're they're fun. Some of the other stories aren't exactly Phantom related, but
None of them
did you read? Yeah, did you read any of them, Steve? Anything you want to quickly?
I read all of them: the Panthers, Shadow, and Phantom Ranger. Probably not as enjoyable. We're talking about fun and stuff. That not really. My pick out of the three of them was the Shadow story. Of those three, there's also Shane Foley. He does a Planet Man story, which one that one was fun. That one was a fun story. The other three not quite so much, but Shane Foley's Planet Man story was a fun one. But I thought it also actually raised some ethical questions about the sanctity of life. In this case, we've got clones.
Ghost in the Machine. And
all that sort of stuff. And I thought it was interesting because as I was thinking about it and thinking about the sanctity of life and clones, it kind of is a bit of a juxtaposition. I love using that word. I think I've used it a couple of podcasts ago now. To the Panther story, where the Panther resorts to using the bad guy's plans. What the bad guy did, stealing the girlfriend or the love interest, in order to get the Panther to do what he wants to do. Then the Panther goes and does exactly the same thing, and takes the bad guy's fiance or whatever hostage. And she was an innocent character. Why is he taking an innocent person prisoner? So. The Panther actually dropped down a couple of rungs in my pecking order.
Yeah.
He's not down to Catman level yet, though.
That's right.
Have you noticed that since you've making mention of Catman, we haven't seen much of Catman since?
Remember, these are fun issues. These are issues you like to read.
Yeah. Some of the stories don't age very well, but some of them are. But
the Phantom Ranger story, I didn't think aged very well. That's
a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, I didn't read the other ones to be honest, but I did like the big back cover, the giant size. The giant size, the Planet Man cover, not a cover. On the back from Shane Foley. I thought that was bright. And I just would love to go on some train trips, Steve, so I can have time to read while I'm commuting.
Well, an hour and a half when I'm not driving. I thought, I'm going to knock off this giant size, and I did.
Yeah.
Well done.
All right. So it's taken probably as long as we all expected, but
that's why we're doing monthly. That's why we do these reviews monthly.
Yeah, correct.
There is a special guest star in the Planet Man story, though. If you haven't read it, there's another Frew character in there.
Yep.
Cool. Let's head around the world now. I'll put you on the spot in a minute, German. Ask you to tell us our German friend's name. The Phantoman reviews are from Mikkel Lick, and we've also got the German Zabersten reviews from
Christian.
There you go. I haven't actually met Christian yet. I must. We'll have to invite us all to the Chronicle Chamber Christmas party this year, Germ, so that we can catch up around the world.
Yeah, it will be good to do something like that one day because we've got India, we've got maybe we can get
the CC crew has all been in a single Zoom chat at any stage, have we? Everyone from that'd be a fun.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll listen to their reviews and hopefully they'll be a little bit quicker than us.
I'm sure they will.
Fantomen review. This time it's issue 4 and 5 of 2023. In issue 4 we have this cool cover by Janusz Ordon. And I really enjoyed the colors and the setting. It's Kit and Katja from the main story, is my guess. And yeah, the main story is written by Philip Madden and art also by Janusz Ordon. Kit has this romance in the Himalaya with Katja, a daughter to a Russian criminal. And as mentioned in the editorial part, they have talked a bit with Tony DePaul while creating this story, so there will be no inconsistency with the future daily strip or the Team Fantomen things now when they are in the same place. And except for that, we have this side comic, a Chris from Valnor, a Torgal spin-off, pretty nice. And that's it for issue 4. Issue 5, we have this really cool cover by Luca Arbata. I really like this cover also, and this main story is Nest of the Undead by Pidde Andersson and Johan Boy. It was first published in Frew in issue 1902 in 2021. Fantomen also did it in black and white as Frew. And we learn how this small village get terrorized by none other than Dracula. Yeah, and the Phantom gets there to start investigating the mysterious circumstances behind this. And we get the conclusion of this Chris of Valmore Thorgal side comic as the backup. And the preview of next issue, we will get the second part of the Belle Epoque suite. We will get Lee Falk, George Olsen, Keith Williams story and a new side comic. And we will also get to vote on the best cover by 2022. Looking forward to that. Time for another Fantomen review with me, Mikael. This time it's issues 6-7 of 2023 with a nice cover by Luca Arbata. But wait, I think we Swedish readers have seen this cover before. It was the image used for this schedule of 2021. And I think it is because there was another artist that was supposed to do this, but couldn't handle the deadline or something. But yeah, it's a nice image. And let's see. First we have the Belle Epoque suite, part 2 by Pidde Andersson and Percy Orcha. And I really enjoyed this arc. The part 2 was as good as the first, and I'm looking forward to the rest. I mean, I really enjoy Pidde's humor, and it was a good story. After that, we have information about how to vote for the best cover of 2022. I've written an article about this in the Chronicle Chambers website. You should check it out. Hopefully Jermayn adds a link in the show notes. Then we have the last story that Lee Falk wrote, all of it himself. The I'll Be in English. And art by George Olsen and Keith Williams. It's quite weak, but Phantom goes back and forth between these tribes, promoting to talk instead of war, and it's okay. But I really enjoy that. I like it that Fantomen prints those stories that were at the time not deemed okay enough for Fantomen, but it's good that we get everything published in Fantomen, in my opinion. After that, the rest of the book is dedicated to a full-length French side comics. It's Le Venin or something like that. It's amazing story to fill the Fantomen, and it's a western about this daughter of a prostitute that grows up and seeks vengeance and revenge and all that. And it's a nice setting, nice art, and a bit, yeah, I really like it. After that, we have the preview of the next issue, issue 8, that will come out 6th of April. It will have the Libertalia, the last album, first part of that, and a new Team Fantomen story by a new Team Fantomen writer, Jörgen Karlsson, who I know from making the Karl Kempe, which I really enjoyed. That has been a few times in Fantomen. And art will be by Carlos Pedrazzini. I'm really bad at pronouncing names, as you know. So looking forward to that. Thank you for me, and happy Fantoming.
Hi, my name is Chris, and today I review the Zauberstern Phantom comic number 5. It cost €9.99, 100 pages with poster. Let's have a look. Thin post. Then in this magazine it's the Return of the Eastern Dark from 2009 from Moonstone Books. Then we have International Waters from 2010 and Godfall Part 1 2010. The cover is painted by Ertugrul Edine. The poster is art from Timo Würz. So let's start with the Return of the Eastern Dark. It's from 2009. We have 44 pages. It's dark, but I like the paintings and the story much. Then cover art, advertising, the poster, advertising, International Waters, 22 pages. Again, a darker comic, but I like this also. The story is nice and the paintings are awesome. Then we have Godfall Part 1, 22 pages here. The art is nice too. I like this magazine a lot. I think it's the best one yet. And next time we have another part of Godfall. The next magazine is on 12th April 23. Some cover arts and the big story. Thanks for watching.
All right, so welcome back to the main CC desk at the moment, or meeting, and it's time to get into the daily and the Sunday stories. So daily 263, Dragons Undone, of course, the art from Mike Manley and the story from Tony DePaul. Sorry?
Dungeons, you said dragons.
Did I say dragons?
Yeah, you've been playing Dungeons and Dragons, haven't you?
Yeah. I got a new movie coming out, don't I? So
Dungeons Undone, which basically summarizes what's going on in the story. That the Phantom has busted into the Rodian dungeons and he's undoing the prisoner situation there. How are we enjoying the way that the story is progressing at the moment? Because we're spending most of the time in the prison and seeing the battle that's taking on between the Phantom, the Bandar, Savannah are all teamed up against the Rodian soldiers. Meanwhile, we're cutting back and seeing Diana and Moz, but largely Diana waiting off to see what is the outcome. So the last month or so, how have you been enjoying those daily stories?
Well, I'm happy to see the Phantom trying to rescue the jailed Rodians. I think that's great and really is in line with what the Phantom would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of all the killing that's going on. Would much prefer him working in the shadows and knocking him out. But it is
I hate
it.
I hate the killing. I
Yeah.
hate the killing. I've
always wondered, and I probably wondered this a couple of years ago, because we never saw the Bandar actually, shoot people or fire arrows into them. I always wondered, because it'd been so long since it happened, what would be the impact on a Bandar warrior who finally killed somebody with their poison arrows, and it been decades since it happened. But here it's just click, 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 click. There's no repercussions. It's something you've got to do.
So one fan on social media said something, and I'm sure he will listen to this podcast. I think it was Prund or Prand. So pronouncing your name wrong. He raised that he couldn't remember the Phantom ever using the Bandar as a show of force. Now, to be fair, the Phantom has done that multiple times. And in the space of 10 minutes, I was able to come up with, half a dozen examples. So the Phantom has used the Bandar in force and sometimes deadly force.
Natural question, Lee Falk stories or other?
In Lee Falk stories. I only focused on Lee Falk stories because that was the thing is, did Lee Falk ever do this? And, and I was able to say, yes, he has done it. So there's that. So look, that's not the concern for me in showing the Bandar in force because, hey, look, Lee Falk's done it. If you've got everyone's fearful of the Bandar because of their poison arrows and stuff like that, I don't have a problem with using that as a threat. For me, like what Steve said, I just kind of wish that they got this what is that sleeping potion, amnesia potion, knock out Savannah, go in the shadows, get the guys out of there, and stop killing people. There are some great moments in the story that I'm enjoying, but and I know Tony's going to listen to this, and I'm looking forward to having an open mic session with Tony one day, hopefully soon, where we can ask him some of these questions. But I'm not enjoying. Yeah, the killing's probably the main thing.
Savannah's a pain in the butt. Yes, she rescued the Phantom back,
yeah.
And I think that's paid now. She needs her firing just willy-nilly and blowing things up and doing things that totally against what the Phantom would be doing, and yet they're not stopping her.
Yeah. That's one thing. Is like there's a panel coming up. Where is it? Where they're talking about her being, basically calling her a barbarian for willingly killing people. There was a great scene, and I like how, because when Tony created Savannah, she became such a fan favorite. It's almost like this story is trying to not let her become a fan favorite anymore. But I just knock her out, give her some sleeping potion, put her in a chokehold or whatever. Just, it's probably not the wisest thing to do, but just get rid of her.
Well, it's got to be obvious that Tony's going to have some plan there.
Yeah,
there's something there. We're now just itching for it to come to light, because there's no way he's letting this go what's the word I'm looking for? Undone, untied, whatever it is.
with the threads being undone and stuff. Yeah, I like this little scene here at the beginning of March where Diana's remembering reading the parts in the book, and I love her reactions here. Like, I love her eyebrows. Her eyebrows just say it all. She is ticked. Hell hath no fury as a woman scorned. She's not impressed, and so like, there's elements and moments that I'm enjoying. Like even here, she's got her lips pursed and her eyebrows and stuff like that. Mike's done a great job in
portraying the emotion.
Yeah, in portraying the emotion. I'm not sure about having kids in an advanced war camp though.
No, this is in the safe spot. That's where Diana is. They're not out going to battle. They're protecting Diana over there.
That's right. But they're not in the deep woods. I would have thought that you would leave the kids behind in the deep woods and go. But yeah, look, that's a side matter. But yeah, I don't know. I hope this gets ended quickly. I hope I'm not reading this for another 6 months to a year.
Oh, look, I'm enjoying all of the action, to be honest, and I know that the killing is not part of what we see typically in the Phantom universe, and you're absolutely right. I can't recall too many times, or if ever, where I've seen the Bandar actually kill somebody. But I suppose they must do it from time to time, because otherwise everyone's going to call their bluff. Someone's going to call their bluff at some point. Is that really a poison arrow, or are you just been saying that for 400 years? Come on, let's have a crack. So anyone who's ever raised a toddler knows that if you make a threat, at some point you've got to follow through on it. This is a good example where they can go and destroy a fascist terrorist organisation type thing across a border without having to hook in and kill other tribes people to show their force.
But are they terrorists?
Or a military situation, whatever it is, they're bad guys. Don't read too much into it.
but this is my point: is that they're not. They're just doing their job.
They don't have to do that job.
That's fine, and those sorts of bad guys have been dying in movies and comic books and that sort of thing.
But forever. Are these actually bad guys?
Bad enough for me, yes.
See, I disagree that they're actually bad guys.
You're being too woke, Jerm. It's time to just get into. You know what?
I think that's the first time anyone has ever said that I'm woke. And if anyone's woke out of the three of us, it's probably you, Dan.
Possibly. I don't know. I'm just enjoying it. And yes, it's unusual, but there's nothing wrong with being unusual and developing stories. We've said, maybe I'm open to things at the moment because I'm enjoying the 22nd Phantom and I'm enjoying this. It's good to see some.
Are you feeling all right there, Dan?
Yeah, no.
Well, it's been a long month.
Normally you're not the one that's so open-minded.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's just good to see some action, and that'll be one of the first criticisms from people. And you're right, you're absolutely right that knocking Savannah out and dragging her away quietly would have been probably a much easier and probably a more typical Phantom way of doing things. But he has unleashed the Kraken, if you like, in letting her out of her cell and providing access to hardcore weaponry, and now he's got to deal with the Pandora's box that he's unplugged. Mixing up my metaphors there.
This is a great panel. There's some great artwork by Mike. There's some great moments by Tony. And look, I love what Tony has done for the Phantom. I don't agree with everything he's done. This is probably I agreed with and I understood showing of the Phantom, showing the Phantom's eyes, the death of the Phantom, that possibility. I enjoyed and I understood all of that. I'm struggling to understand what we're doing here now, even though I was happy that he is going to rescue the rest of the prisoners. So maybe I'm struggling to. Yeah, maybe So I don't know. Maybe you can't make an omelette without breaking a couple of eggs. So maybe
the
I am
Phantom
being.
himself hasn't actually killed anybody. He's been around, and the Bandar have done it, and that's probably been a bit grating. But the Phantom himself hasn't actually, broken that unwritten rule. So
Maybe I am being woke.
All right. Well, what about the Sunday? Are we happy to move on to that?
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, so the Sunday is Return of the Temple of the Gods. It's I think we talked last time about it being one of the longest running Sundays, so it continues to be so with no obvious end in sight at the moment. It's I don't know how your expression there, Jim, probably tells me enough about how you're feeling about the Sunday at the moment.
Sorry, I'm trying to over there. I struggled with the concept at the beginning. I've said this probably for the last 6 months. Struggled with the initial concept. Didn't like the Temple of the Gods. Loving the artwork. I was not a fan when this story started. I'm not in the not a fan concept. I'm on the fence, and I'm still on the fence. And I'm intrigued where this is going, but not much has changed in the last couple of months, probably in the last 3 or 4 podcasts. The art's great. Jeff's having he's I'm not sure if he's having fun, but he's pulling out all the stops with some of this work.
Yeah, you're right. I think the art is fantastic, and excuse me. This whole story, not just in the last month or so, I think he's having a great fun.
Yeah, I'm not on the fence if I ever was about the Temple of the Gods and the concept of that. I don't like it. The art is fantastic. I'm not enjoying the story. Anything, it's that supernatural stuff, and you can take it to a point. I think if there was a Little People story or a Who's story or a Steggy story that was going on this long, people be probably sick of it as well. I'll be interested to see how it finishes, but now we've got an entire race of subterranean humans or subhumans or lesser humans, and they're
almost humans
in the 18th century in some sort of fictional world.
I'm intrigued.
It was almost steampunkish. It's not steampunk, but it's almost
yes.
Because
there is a hint of that. I like the development of Diana as a character, as someone who's going to tag along on missions and that sort of thing. And I like the revisiting of the Phantom of this generation of Phantom somewhere that a previous generation of Phantom has visited and been revered. And there's the big mural of him on the wall that we saw.
That's pretty epic.
Yeah, so those sorts of things are cool, but it's probably outweighed, unfortunately, by the rest of it.
And it's fair to say that you're not, you're not normally a fantasy story fan.
No.
So you come from that. No, let's be honest. You come from that bias already.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I don't mind the fantasy elements, and the story. People say a lot of these stories drag on, but there's lots of character development, and I actually used one of the Sundays. I can't remember if it was in the past month or earlier than that. Actually, in my ethics class with my Year 11s, about reasoning and conscience and worldview and all these terms that the kids need to know for their VCE task, and seeing it in comic form, and panel by panel, breaking down or analysing the ethical choices or the moral choices that the Phantom's making and why he's making them. So I thought it was fun to bring the Phantom into Year 11 RE. It was great.
Well done. And homework should have all been giving them a Phantom comic to read.
Well, actually, part of the session was, how do you actually read a comic? Left to right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
But it was interesting. We only just flashed it up quickly at the end. But yeah, I'm wondering, is Tadra good? That's her name, isn't it? She's talking with what seems to be the leaders of the Almost Humans. Is she selling the Phantom and Diana out, or just merely explain the situation to her superiors? And she mentioned something about that big Muriel, and saying, "Oh, the big purple one, or whatever she says, could have had time to change and look like him and dress like him. Can't possibly be the same person." So they're coming from a certain standpoint as well. They need to protect themselves.
Yeah.
They're not sure who these guys are. They could be trying to pull a fast one on their society, and obviously this society is something that works.
And something they're protective of.
Something they're protective of. I'd love to see more of it, but we don't want to be bogged down in that sort of background narrative or development. Someone can write some fan fiction about it, maybe. But yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to come out tomorrow.
At the time of recording, yeah, agree. Yeah, and I think that's where I'm intrigued where this is going. And I think that's what's making me sitting on the fence. I'm not a huge fan of the concept, but I'm intrigued where it's going because I think Tony and Jeff have done a good job in making me from a hater to a intrigued.
One thing that I do know about Tony's stories is that you're best waiting until they're finished to reflect on them. Enjoyed them because the fact that they're drip fed, sometimes you go, I'm not enjoying this, but the payoff is awesome. So it just takes longer.
And I'm expecting that with the Savannah thing.
Yes, me too. Far more so than this. All right, so that's all of the stories that are getting about at the moment. Let's ship into the news aspect now. As I sort of said at the outset, there's been a lot going on. Maybe nothing that's earth-shattering or groundbreaking, but then we've had some big news earlier this year that is still bubbling away in the game. We're not going to talk about the game again for the rest of the podcast. But what we are going to do, Jem, and I'll throw over to you for this because it's time for our seasonal Patreon prize draw, and you've got that all set up and ready to go to be drawn live on the podcast today. Very exciting.
Yes, well, live as we're doing it, but I guess when they're watching it won't be live. But I get what you mean. So this is the prize. Now this is from Mythos over in Brazil. It's the Jim Appario book, and it comes with a good mark ring, which you can see in the little velvet bag. Now, it is fair to say that these are actually sold out and they're next to impossible to get. We've been able to get a hold of a copy through some friends in Brazil, and it's still sealed. So the winner of our Patreon gets this. So if you want to learn more about our Patreon, I don't want to spend more time going on about it. Go to our website, you can find out about it. As Dan said, we have seasonal draws where every dollar you donate gives you an entry into every seasonal, and you get a prize, and this will get posted to you for free. So look, it's worth doing. You get access to the to podcast early and other news that we get to break as well. So as you can see here, if you're on YouTube, you can see all the different people who support us. So thank you to all of those type of people. I'm just going to randomize, mix up the names like I'm shuffling a deck of cards. And then we'll press this little start button over here. And then the winner who will get this amazing book sent to you is Thomas. Congratulations, Thomas. I think this is your second or third time you've won something. Yes. And I know there's a few people who have not won anything yet, and I know the messages I will be receiving. But Thomas, you will enjoy this. This book is next to impossible to get a hold of. I've actually had someone they found out that I had a copy, and they said, "Oh, I'll give you $150 for it." And I said no, and then they even started going up and up and up. And I'm going, no, it's a Patreon prize. It's for the Patreons. It's for the Patreons. So there's a lot of people that are eager to get a hold of this. They are sold out, especially in Brazil as well. Can't get them in Brazil. So congratulations, Thomas. You will get that sent to you, and that's because you sponsor us. You get access to podcasts, you get access to sneak peeks with the Phantom video game and everything else, and you get prizes. How good is that?
Very good. Congratulations, Thomas. And thank you, Jen, for breaking the rule that I said that we're not mentioning the Phantom video game. You brought it up already in your very first segment. Well done. Anyway, just to not mention the Phantom video game again, to clarify, what we're about to talk next is the card game, the Phantom card game that came out from Games by Lick about 2 years ago now. Was when the Phantom card game started coming out. There's a special on at the moment with people who haven't picked that up yet, and you should have, because it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of great Phantom imagery in it. There's free shipping for any Australian or New Zealand buyers of the card game at the moment.
Yes.
Get around it. Get onto it. It is best if you're not into deck building card games or anything like that. Get into it because it's a nice way to introduce yourself to that sort of game genre, particularly with our hero, who's the reason why you're listening to this or watching this podcast in the first place. It's a nice little. Oh, here's the box.
Yeah. So look, Steve, you're a deck builder person. I'm not.
Really. I just played this game.
but
a little bit of starting playing that game got me playing. There's this game called Summoners made by this local fella, that fella, and it's all about you got your monster cards and your magic cards, and it's actually pretty cool. So I've been playing that now with my boy Jeremy, but I would never have touched it if I hadn't started playing the Phantom card game. Yeah,
and look, even if you're not a deck builder, it's a great collectible. That's the size of the box. You can see it's bigger than my head. Just
that's the best size box.
It's got great art. The one I've got is the special one with the poster. Let me carefully, and we've got a full proper review up on our website. But look, it's great collectibles as well. So even if you're just a collector of memorabilia like I am, it's got all this type of stuff, which is, pretty awesome.
It's great quality stuff.
Yeah.
It is.
Nice
So,
card.
yeah. So look, if you haven't brought it yet, check out the links, go buy it. You get free shipping, and that's like 20 odd bucks or something like that. So you can't go wrong with that.
Shipping you'd have to pay if you wanted to ship Germ's head, and then add a little bit because it's bigger than that. Free shipping is not nothing for a box this.
Particularly here in Australia and New Zealand, when we're miles away from everywhere.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah. The limited edition Henrik Salsom print. So I might let you take us through that one, Germ, because you're right across what's going on in the Scandinavian world.
Yeah. Now, I was talking to Henrik December, and he teased it then. I actually forgot about it, to be truthfully honest. So if you're listening to this, Henrik, I'm sorry, but he said, keep an eye out, first quarter. I got something that's not Phantom related coming out. And I'm like, oh, wow. And then, Christmas, everything else comes out. And then I saw it, and then I messaged him and I said, this is what you teased. And he goes, yep. So basically there's a print company. There's like two sister companies, one based in the US, one based in the UK. They do all sorts of prints for popular culture or pop culture. Henrik has had some other non-Phantom Men or Phantom prints done by them in the past, and he said, look, the quality is always top-notch by them. Thick, great print, great people to deal with. There's two new designs that haven't been featured on covers or anything like that before. Yes, they're pricey. You're probably looking at about $50 per print. You can get a limited edition one, which is like a version without like the Phantom logo on it. So there's two designs, but 4 different prints. So for some, collectors who need everything and every variant, they're going to buy 4. Me, when I buy them, I am going to buy them, but not right now. I'll probably buy the 2 version ones because I actually think they look better.
Because I agree. I think looking at the prints that are available, the Virgin ones are better. Which of the two do you prefer, Steve? The two designs?
I'll have to have another look at it. I just had a quick look then, and I thought the Virgin ones were better than ones with total on. But
And
as
you
soon as
only
bring them
pay
up,
probably an extra $10 or $5 or something like that for them as well.
the
Yeah.
Skull Throne one for me.
The Skull Throne one for you. Yep, that's I can absolutely see that. I personally, it's the top one for me. I guess the orange. I like the orange sunset sky background and the skull in the background there. But yeah, again, so if I was only going to get one of the four, it would be that one. Yeah, I haven't picked those up yet.
Awesome. Yeah, but look,
Right.
I reckon they're worth getting.
Yep, for sure. And look, $50 for a print, yes, that's not cheap. But if you were going to a supernova or something like that and picking up prints, that's probably about what you're paying if you're picking them up off a lot of artists and that sort of thing. It's also not ridiculous. So yeah, Henrik does great work. Now, continuing our sorry?
Oh, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, cool.
I know you're surprised by that, but yeah, keep going.
It happens. A stopped clock is right twice a day or something, they say. So the Shakti, as we continue our march around the world, let's go to India. And the Shakti in India is publishing Saibari stories along with Regal. Now, Jim, do you want to fill us in on why is that significant that we've suddenly got two publishers both publishing Saibari stories in India?
Well, Saibari's Saibari. He needs no introduction. He's a legend. Everyone loves his work, especially if they're going to be published in colour. Now, what was happening before is Shatki and Regal were printing the daily and Sunday stories from the last 25 odd years. But that's only 25 years, and they're printing quite a lot of comics. So the pool of stories was getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, we originally addressed this when we interviewed Regal, probably about maybe a year ago, maybe 6 months ago. About a year ago, I reckon it would be. And they said that they were looking at doing Saibari stories back then. Now, Shatki's obviously seen that, oh, hang on, yes, the group of stories is getting smaller, and so they've followed Regal's I don't know, footsteps, whatever you want to call it, and are now doing Saibari stories as well. Now, while I think that's great, I would actually like to see Shatki do something a little bit different than always just copying Regal. Now, in an ideal world, I would like to see them reproducing Moonstone stories and maybe even Team Phantom stories. Now, I know there's probably an extra fee involved with that, but yeah, I just think, like we see Zubistan reproducing Moonstone stories at the moment in their comics, and from your review, which if you listen to this, you've probably listened to Christian's review. Most German fans are enjoying that as well, and I just think that maybe Shatki could do something a little bit different.
Yeah, very good. Well, I guess they know their audience, or they're targeting a particular audience, and Indian fans are also quite well renowned for loving all of the old stuff too. So I guess it's a tricky balance, and the price point that, as you say, there might be the deciding factor. So anyway, I hope all of our Indian friends and listeners continue to enjoy the Saibari stories, because he does do some wonderful stuff. All right, moving right along. We'll talk about a bit of sad news in many ways. Is that we've had a merchandiser in Australia for the last 3 or 4 years have a license through KFS to produce some fandom-related merchandise. Reaper's Quest, formerly Wolfric Media. We've spoken to the owner or the proprietor of Reaper's Quest on the podcast before, Kelby Wooldridge. They've come to the end of their contracted period for the Australian license for Phantom merchandise, and have decided to relinquish that and move out of the business. It's a shame. We hate to see it at any stage where someone who's producing Phantom stuff for us is compelled to stop doing that. But I guess all good things must come to an end, and these things happen. I'm wearing my Wolfric Media, Reaper's Quest hat. It's something I think I've started doing on most podcasts just for glare, really. But it is good at solving that problem. I never did pick up any of the jewelry. It just was priced out of where I could reach, unfortunately. Did you guys manage to pick up much of the stuff that they had out?
No, just the hats and the beanies. I think like COVID wouldn't have helped because it's they're proper jewelry pieces.
The jewelry's a luxury, isn't it?
Yeah, I think also for me, I've only just started wearing a watch again, and that's because I'm trying to lose weight, and it tells me when I need to get off my lazy butt and do some walking. But that's from wearing this at the start of the year, I hadn't been wearing a watch, or I got to wear my wedding ring, and that's it. I haven't been wearing any other jewelry for probably since I was probably about 14 or 15. So that's a good, crikey, we won't say exactly how long, but I don't wear jewelry myself. I reckon in America it might have done a little bit better, the jewelry items, because in America they're a little bit more flashy with their rings and stuff like that. But look, it's a pity that none of it wasn't more successful, but unfortunately sometimes this is what happens.
What about you, Steve? Did you you got the beanie, didn't you, Steve? You got the
beanie, and I got the beanie and the hat. Yeah.
Yep.
Are you asleep then, Steve?
I was beginning to drift off a little bit there.
I was getting ready to try and pin the screen on you but Dan woke you up.
That's why I asked the question twice. So he heard his name and woke up, and I had to ask the question again. And I thought I'd covered that brilliantly, Jerm, until you just got the bus there.
Got a highlight it.
Look, it is a real shame, and because and you highlighted there before, Jerm, when you were talking about the card game. So a lot of Phantom fans are collectors. And whether they use the item or not for what it's intended, it goes on a shelf and we enjoy having it. The jewelry is too expensive to justify doing that. If you're going to spend that much money, it needs to be a functional item, really. And I'm like you, I've only got my wedding ring. Maybe if I was getting married in the last few years, I would have got a wedding ring designed by. It would have been nice to have a little good mark on the wedding ring. It might have been cool. Don't know what my wife would have said about that, but it's my ring.
Renew your vows, mate. Renew your vows.
I've got to do them before the end of March when the license actually runs out, if I'm going to do that. But look, Kelby is selling off the jewelry boxes, and I guess one thing that's to his advantage is because it was all made to order, which was a really unique part of the whole thing that we commented on at the time. He's not actually left with a whole heap of stock that he's got to get rid of, which is great. That he's not as out of pocket as he otherwise might be in that sense. The jewelry boxes, though, the little jewelry cardboard boxes, he is selling those off. So if you want to get in touch, we've got a story or two on the website, I think, about the closure of Reaper's Quest and how to get into contact with Kelby to pick up those little jewelry boxes, which is a nice little collectible to have that you can justify buying and putting on a shelf.
So what's actually interesting is we've discussed this on the podcast before, but for those who have come in late or slept through the last time we mentioned it, sorry, Steve, is that when you relinquish your license, you actually have to destroy your stock. So you make mention that Kelby's in a unique situation, but whatever jewelry boxes he doesn't sell and any items that he had made, he can't actually sell them once he's lost his license, and you actually have to just physically destroy them or send them to someone.
So you're not even allowed to sell things you have already created under the license?
if you don't have a license to sell it, no.
Gee, there you go. Righto. So you've got the 31st of March then is when the license runs out. So you better jump on the website. I hope we get this published as quickly as we can, Jim. We should probably finish talking so that you can get publishing, so people can get hearing the information that you've got to get in touch with Kelby by the 31st of March. All right.
I better go hurry up and order a jewelry box. I've just been putting that one off, but I better go do that now.
Yeah, and there's a little incentive in terms of leftover stock there. It does appear to be one good mark pendant that Kelby has said, similar to not dissimilar to the prize draw that we had there before. For every box you purchase, you get a ticket in the pendant, if you like, and he is sending that to one lucky jewelry box purchaser. So if you are the lucky person, your jewelry box will actually have something in it when it arrives, which would be lovely. All right. Something that you have a little bit more time to prepare for, not heaps though, is the best cover and story voting for Phantomen 2022. We're getting towards the end of March, and they're finally getting onto their best of 2022 competition. You've already cast your votes for this, I imagine, Jerm?
Yes, I've already cast my votes for it. The voting's been up for probably about a month or so. The best story's been up for a little bit longer. There's prizes to be won. Just trying to remember. I think it's prints and some books and stuff like that. The beauty about the cover is that even if you can judge a cover by the computer screen, even if you don't read the comics or anything like that as well. So, even if you don't buy the comics, you can go on the website, have a look, find out the cover you like the best, which image you like the best, and then vote for it. So, and then, you might be able to get something cool out of it. So there's no excuse for fans not to enter that prize. And yes, they do send prizes out, even if you live outside of Sweden as well.
That's good of them.
Very good. All right. Something we've picked up from social media, and we will discuss it in the much mentioned episode 247 of the podcast, which is coming next. Matt Kime has shared some images on social media about a prequel that he's writing at the moment to the very first Phantom story. So the Singh Brotherhood obviously is the story, and Matt's writing a prequel to that to I guess plug some gaps that he sees in the way that Lee Falk finished that up and posted some artwork of that online. Now, obviously, we've got to be careful what we say here because we've already had the conversation with Matt about what he's doing with that. But what can we say, Steve, that doesn't give away too much about where the story's going? Hey, look, we can talk about what we think. Are you excited to see a story that does what Matt Kime's trying to do here?
I think it is. Like anytime, well, Matt and Shane and a few other people are really great at playing in really deeply into Lee Falk's sandbox. Getting into those little holes that are there within the stories, or a plot line that wasn't really developed, or was touched on in a story, but then never saw the light of day again. And Matt, that's what Matt's doing with this story that he's writing. It's something that was mentioned back in the first story, and he's just zeroed in on it. And there's more to this than just a couple of panels of whatever was in the actual story. There's a full fleshed out story going on here. So I'm interested to see what he's going to do with it.
Agree. Listen to the podcast, read the article, and you'll be excited.
All right. A little bit of sad news to finish out the news, and it's come out in the last few days at the time of recording about Joe Geller's death at the age of 92 or 3, I think. He's just died in the past week. A lot of fans may not know the name Joe Geller. If I'm pronouncing that right, I hope I am. Joe and his family, and of course our thoughts are with Joe's family at this time. But from a Phantom fan point of view, if you do know of Joe, you would know that he was worked on the pencils with helped as Cy Barry's penciler for a good chunk of time. You said earlier 17 years, Germ. He was doing the pencils for Cy Barry on the Phantom strips.
Yes, that's correct. From the mid 60s to the early 80s, I believe, what it is. Worked with others like Andre LeBlanc, George Olsen. Fans probably know George Olsen a little bit more, but yeah, he was introduced. Don Heck was another Cy Barry assistant and stuff like that as well. Joe was actually childhood friends with Cy Barry, and they remained friends up until his passing. So look, what we've done as a mark of respect and also a bit of a tribute to his legacy. Now, obviously, he was only an uncredited, people would say, oh, he was only an uncredited penciler. His input was, 17 years working on the strip. That's quite a good legacy. And we have unearthed an interview which was done in 1995 by Ed Rhodes, Friends of the Phantom newsletter fame. And we are going to repost that on our website. We have permission from the Rhodes family and also from Pete as well, who's the two owners, the editors, key editors of the newsletters. So we've done one recently featuring some words from Claire Moore, who was the widow of Ray Moore. And we've got one from Joe Giella here as well. It's quite a long interview. Talks a lot about his work with Cy Barry, his friendship with Cy Barry, but also his DC and Marvel work as well. It's quite fascinating. Here's some stories about his interactions with Stan Lee, going to parties with Stan Lee, who he's... he went to the Superman premiere with Stan Lee. They sat behind the governor of California while watching that. His drinking buddies, which was Mike Sirakarski, I believe it was, and then and there was a funny story about how he actually saved his backside when he was getting told off by Stan Lee as well. So there's some great stories in the interview, into the article. That will be coming out soon. There'll be so keep an eye on that. Or keep an eye out on social media. And from everyone at Chronicle Chamber, thank you for your input. I spoke to Joe once on the phone. We were actually trying to get him to come on the podcast at one stage, but that never actually quite happened, unfortunately. But I spoke to him for probably 20, 30 minutes on the phone. And he was a lovely person. And and for many people who listen to this, they've actually had a lot more to deal with him. And our thoughts are all with you.
Well said. All right, so that brings us to the end of the news for March of 2023. As maybe not quite as bumper as our January/February edition, but we've still enjoyed the evening chatting fandom with each other, and hopefully you've enjoyed listening to it as well.
And you haven't fallen asleep like Stephen.
I didn't quite. I can feel myself going.
It's getting close to the morning where you live, Stephen. I think you always do an impressive job to get through, given your time frame, your time zone that we're all trying to work through here. Australia's a bloody big country. We may all have similar accents, but it's a big place we've got here. Look, as always, we really appreciate the interaction that we have with any of our listeners and Phantom fans from around the world. If you've got any ideas or creators you'd like to see us get in touch with and interview, or even go back and revisit with, obviously, as we've said many, many times, we've got Matt Kime and Shane Foley on our next podcast. They're regulars, and we love talking to them, and we're looking very much forward to sharing that conversation with everyone who's listening to this at the moment. Whatever you think about the podcast or what we've been saying, if you want to share any of your thoughts, your feedback, your opinions, certainly any of the social media platforms, we tend to find, I think, that the most engagement in terms of people adding to the conversation probably is in our YouTube comments. And I guess that's because people are sitting there actually interacting in real time, and it's great to see sometimes 3-4 different occasions where someone's commented on the podcast sort of as they chip in with the conversation. So do enjoy that, and Jerm, you're very good for providing replies and engaging with people as they make the effort to do that, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's worth making mention that a lot of times points that we raise, Tony DePaul himself actually comments and replies and laughs at our comments and tells us we're on the mark or off the mark. So if you want to know what Tony DePaul thinks, you've got his blog. You've got his blog site, but it's probably also worth checking out some of his comments on YouTube as well.
Absolutely. So all of those links can be found through our website, chroniclechamber.com. It's probably on your favourites list now, I should imagine. If it's not, it should be. Add that to your quick start bar.
It should be a homepage. As soon as you open up the browser, it should be going to chroniclechamber.com.
chroniclechamber@gmail.com is probably saved in your email contacts as well, which would be absolutely appropriate. Don't forget, for our Patreons, we've mentioned it a couple of times before, but the prize draw that we had earlier, even the Friends of the Phantom newsletter, the article that's going to come up about Joe Giella, if you've a Patreon, you've had access to that for years because it's been sitting in the Phantom Preservation Project folders there. So there's a lot of gold in there, as we say every time we talk about P3, and for the last time, I know we said we weren't going to mention the video game, but that's also the place to go to get the sneak peeks of all of the video game news a few days before they're even released to the video game social medias. So
and if you're listening to this, I get the feeling, I smell it in the air, hear the distant jungle drums, that there might be some more updates coming soon. So.
Ooh.
Oh, that works, Steve.
That works.
I'm actually looking at Tony DePaul's comments on the YouTube.
Very good. All right. Well, when you're over on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. If you're listening through a podcast app, make sure that you schedule us and download the episodes and all that sort of stuff. And as we said right from the outset, wherever you can take the 30 seconds to give us a rating or perhaps leave a review, that would be greatly appreciated as well. But all of that said, thank you very much, everyone. Until after the next Comics and News. I don't know when we're going to see each other again. Who knows? Thanks very much for listening, everybody, and happy fandoming.
Happy fandoming.
Happy fandoming.
The ghost who walks. Enemies beware. The phantom's always there, but you won't find the phantom.